All right, so I'm here with Stephanie from Creating Within, and I've actually been a great big fan of her videos. I watched a lot of videos, and she's interviewed some of the great names out there like Elliot Haltz and Teal Swan. So what we wanted to do today in this video is kind of talk about um, sort of our journey into, like, let's just call it personal development, and some of the mentors that we had and the realizations that we came to at this point. Personally, I've been doing all this personal development work on myself for about 10 years now. So it's been a long time, and we just wanted to discuss some of the realizations that we had on this journey. So Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. But I guess you kind of did it for me. Well, I'm Stephanie Fleitas. Well, okay, not Fleitas anymore. Actually, Stephanie Wolomoski now, but with Creating Within, and I have a blog, and I do interviews called Candid Conversations. Although I haven't done one, we were just talking about it in a long time. That's it.
All right, perfect. So yeah, I mean, I'll have a link to your video, but you've been doing videos for a long time. Like we were talking about it last time, maybe 4 or 5 years at this point, which is great. So obviously you've been in the personal development world for a long, long time. So why don't you talk a little bit about, like, I personally would love to know about your journey of how you kind of got started, what you got started in, just how it all started for you.
Well, with I don't know, with personal development, I think it's a lifelong journey. And for me, it started when I was really young. I wouldn't call it personal development at the beginning.
Hmm.
It was more like a spiritual quest.
Mm.
Since I was really young, I just always felt connected to something beyond. My mother used to tell me that when I was like 5, I used to collect like little statues of anything that was religious, and I would have a whole stack next to my bed, like on my nightstand. And she would take it away, and I would be like, "No, I can't go to sleep if you take them away." So for me, it was always like this search, this connection of feeling that there was something more beyond this experience that I was always drawn to, and that kind of made me feel at ease with whatever craziness I felt inside. And then the personal development, I would say that I really started diving into it probably middle school. I
Hmm.
remember my first book that I purchased was The Seven Habits of Highly Effective Teens by
Stephen Covey.
Sean, yeah, Stephen Covey.
Yeah.
And so that was my first book. I think I read it like in the end of sixth grade or something.
Wow. So you started very, very early. It's been,
Yeah.
yeah.
hmm no, I did. I think it was more because I I wasn't comfortable. Like, I don't know. It was just like, I think I grew up with a lot of criticism, not on purpose. Like, I don't, nobody did it maliciously, but I just grew up like everybody thought I was like a bad kid because I had like a big mouth and I said what I wanted. And I thought very differently. I think now when I look back in retrospect, I think I was just at the time ahead of my time for my age. Like, I understood and I saw things that um, adults, like I wouldn't think that a child should have any like opinions or conversations in. So that causes a lot of conflict. And so I think I was just in search to fit in and to kind of what was wrong with me type of thing. And I loved reading. So yeah, I started very early with that book. And since then, like my whole collection of books was self-help and business books.
Well, I always like to say that great people are always ahead of their time.
It's true. That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, personally for me, I really got started maybe about 10 years ago, back in 2007, 2008. And obviously I was just a curious child to begin with, and I'm pretty sure I was always looking at different ideas and different people that I listened to. But I think what was kind of like the turning point for me is I looked up when I was younger. I actually looked up to my dad as like this very strong guy who had all the answers. He knew everything. And then when I turned 21, on my 21st birthday, my dad actually had a heart attack.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and then one thing led to another, and his health really started deteriorating. And just me watching that as a someone, as a kid who saw him as this powerful guy who had all the answers, and just seeing that started just I started questioning a lot of stuff. I started questioning everything about life, and that kind of led into different things. And I remember finding guys like Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins at the time, and it just my whole perspective changed, and I started thinking, okay, these guys probably have the answers to what life is supposed to be and what life is all about. And we're gonna talk more about what realizations we've had years down the road. But yeah, that's how I kind of got started, and then
That I'm
yeah,
sorry, but that's usually it's crazy, but I think that a lot of times something tragic in our life that shakes us and makes is usually like what takes us on the path. I think that's how it is for most people naturally. I think it takes us something to really rock us, to make us stop and kind of look within or ask the bigger questions.
yeah.
So,
I think that if someone's super smart, I just like to think that way. If you're super smart, then you kind of bring that struggle to yourself, even when the times are good. Like you don't have any kind of tragic thing happen to you, but you could always make out that things. You could kind of make out that things aren't what you're told, and what's being portrayed to you is not 100% correct. But then if you're not that smart, like I was, and most people are in general, then something has to shake you up to actually start questioning things like that.
wait. When you said, what did you just like? When you just said right now that that some people aren't as smart as what?
Well, I was saying that uh, I think that some people, you don't need some tragedy to kind of make you
Yeah.
question things, right? But these are very minority, though. I think very few people actually start thinking on those lines, even without a big kind of like a shake up in your life. So I just call them like the smart people that could question things even without it. But then I said majority of the people have to be kind of shaken up. Something usually happens that shakes you up and makes you question all these things.
Yeah, yeah. I think that that's true. I think it's not necessary, and I see the word that you use, smart, to kind of make the difference, a differentiation. But I just think that also by nature, because depending on the environment you grew up in and your surroundings, we're kind of like in this bubble, and it's kind of like we're asleep, and then something shakes us up to kind of reach in, and then sometimes it hurt. It's to some people it happens really early on, sometimes in the middle, and then there's some people who aren't till like they're 60 or 70 that they have like this realization that I've met people, and it's like their whole life shifts, their whole perspective on the world. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a mystery. You just don't know why it happens
Hmm.
to yeah,
How's
whoever.
how's your dad? Did
Well, he actually passed away.
did he pass away when you were 21 when
N-
he had the heart attack, or
no,
he had it and
he didn't. He actually went through a bypass surgery, and he was fine. But he kept having a lot of health issues after that. He had a stroke, and then kidney failure, and a lot of stuff.
what did
So
that make you question when you went through that? What was going on through your mind? Like, what were the things you were questioning at that point?
um, I think well, first of all, like I said, that feeling that the most powerful person that I thought growing up, just watching him suffer and go through those moments made made me feel helpless. I was like, how, what I could do if there's nothing I could do, just very helpless. But then it also made me question things like, I saw him battle through depression and stuff, and a lot of the
Mm.
shit that he went through, and it just made me feel like, is that the way to live your life? Because I could kind of now at that point I could understand that he could pass away, and that might be end of his life, and how did he live his life, and how should I live my life now that I'm becoming an adult? How should I live my life? And is the life that he taught me, or the life that I learned from him, is that the right way, or is there some other way to live life? So all these questions, the bigger picture about life, I think started unfolding around that time.
Mm. That's deep.
Yeah. What were who were some of your kind of like your mentors, you would say, around when you were trying to discover yourself and transform yourself? Were there any people that stand out that kind of you looked up to?
It depends. When I look back, I don't know if per se I would say that I have, like, I know people that have mentors growing up or they had one specific person. For me, necessarily, I don't think I had a specific person, but I think that I was very observant, and I still am.
Mm,
And I think it's just a natural thing that I have. So, especially growing up, I was very observant of people. So, I learned a lot from my environment, what I saw, the things that people said, what they did, the things they went through, the stories I heard. So, I learned a lot from people in general, like their experiences. So, I would say that most people, were my mentors in the sense that I took from them, like, the good and the bad to kind of determine, okay, I want that, or, this person took this route in life and this is what happened. But in general, I would say, like, I had a good guidance counselor in high school.
mm,
I wouldn't say she was my mentor, but she was somebody. I was going through a really rough time with my mom at the time. She was really sick. And she was there really to just listen to me. I went to a lot of psychologists growing up, so that helped. And really just my spirituality. I always turned, in my lowest points in my life, I always turned inwards. I always turned to what I call my angels and God. And that was really my safe space. And I feel that that's really what's guided me um, throughout my life.
so it seems like you were always like that in the were, did you always feel that you were guided, or that kind of, were you connected to that guide within you?
Yeah, I think that I was since I was really little, because I felt very early on, and I think that that's what brought a lot of my struggles, is that I don't think my mom at the time, or my family, understood, like, okay, the fact that I was a little bit more aware for my age. But I always felt like this sense of self, like I knew who I was early on, like I had strong opinions.
Mm,
I would watch the news, or like I just was very clear on what I thought was right or wrong. I would watch things on TV, it would affect me, I would cry. In school, if something happened, this is when I was a lot younger, I would stand up for those who didn't have a voice. There was a teacher, I think in eighth grade, I remember, I won't forget. Her name was Miss Pearson, and she was a math teacher. Now I know why I'm so bad at math, because eighth grade is when you start learning like algebra and stuff. And this teacher was so mean. And so she would sit in class. She would like she smoked a lot, so she had this like little hoarse voice. And she wouldn't teach. She just put stuff up, and then if you ask her a question and a kid raised their hand, she'd be like, duh, what are you, dumb? Or she'll just like put you on the spot. And at that age, like, who wants to be put on the spot? And I remember I was like, nobody would ask and you wouldn't learn. And I remember I got so fed up that I started a petition, and I got everybody in the eighth grade class to sign it. And I took it to the vice principal, and I said, listen, this is a teacher. Like, she's not good. She shouldn't be teaching. This is how she talks to the students. Things like this. And I think, yeah, I was in eighth grade, and she got in trouble. So I was always that person who would stand up or speak up in class or have an opinion. I wasn't afraid of authority. So that got me in trouble a lot.
you're always a
And
troublemaker, huh? I see.
yeah. And then eventually I lost my weight. But I would say that for the majority of, I've always felt connected. I've gone through my disconnection process, but my best, like my inner guidance has always been like the place where I felt the safest.
Wow. Yeah, I remember, I think I was kind of rebellious too, just to begin with. I remember in fifth grade, talking about school, my teacher was like, she would always tell everyone to fold your hands and just put it on the desk. It's like, fold your hands and have it on the desk. So I remember sitting on a desk where we had like few other students, and some of the students were being mean to me. So I wasn't folding my hands. So one of the guys was like, come on, dude, you gotta fold your hands on the desk. And I'm like, no, I'm just gonna leave it like this instead of folding my hands. And the teacher's like, Sonny, you gotta fold your hands. And I said, hold on one second, this is falling down. I hate these earpieces. They never stick in my ear. These fall down.
No, especially when you're getting charged up because the memories coming
Right?
back and you're telling a story.
Dude. But yeah, she's like, you gotta fold your hands. And I'm like, her name was Miss Ragland. I'm like, Miss Ragland, I don't understand. If I keep my hands like this or if I do this, what difference does it make? And that was me in fifth grade. So I always kind of had that anti-authority thing about me as well, which is kind of ironic in the sense that when we think about anti-authority, that doesn't sound good. We think about someone who's rebellious and someone who's doing bad things, but it is a good quality for a child to have. Like if I see a child that is not rebellious at all in many ways, they're just always saying yes to everything. It really scares me that who they're gonna become growing up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that I learned from growing up because it was my biggest struggle. And that's why I feel like one of my missions is to work with children. I'm really good with them, and
Mm-hmm.
I identify with children right away because I think that as a society in general, we're not taught to think for ourselves and to
Mm-hmm.
critically think, especially not even in school. And then you have parents who, are old school and they raise like the kids are kids and the parent is the authority, and they know better. For me, my mentality has always been, and it still is, that when I have children, my children are my equal in the sense that I want my policy in my house is always going to be think for yourself. Like I want you to be able to question my authority, obviously respectfully. But if I punish you or we have a disagreement, I want my kid to be able to give me their perspective and be able to give me their feedback because I think that's what's wrong with society. It's like we try to make robots and just like these people that are mechanical, but we're really not. We're individuals, and like you said, being rebellious, it's not being rebellious. It's thinking for yourself outside the box. You may not think the way that everybody thinks, and then all of a sudden that's like, oh, you're a rebel, you're anti-authority, and it's like, no, you have a brain. And I think that that's a huge quality, and it's something that's missing in the school systems,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You actually brought up a really good topic about thinking for yourself. And before we actually kind of start talking about that, because I really want to talk about that, one thing I really wanted to mention when we start talking about children is one kind of theory I have is when I look at kids, and I have nieces and nephew, I have like 3 year old, 4 year old, and every time I go visit my sister, I'm always playing around with them. And I could just see how just genuinely happy they are, how genuinely curious they are, and just all the qualities that you want to have as a human being. Kids have it. They're just happy. They're so in the moment. And as we grow older, you would think that we should be improving as we get older. So maybe if the kids are present, as you get older, you should be even more present. You should be even more happier. You should be even more curious about the world. But the opposite is happening. We see that all the time. You see a 5 year old kid and a 60-year-old man, more often than not, I'm making generalization, then more often than not, you see a 60-year-old just being grumpy and just, tired of life, and you see a 5 year old just be happy. So yeah, it's definitely something, and that question has always hit me too, is that something along the way has gone wrong, that the social order that we're following is probably not correct if
Yeah.
that's kind of like the people that we're producing. It's almost like if you have a pond and you have the water in the pond is bad and then all the fish are getting sick, you keep blaming the fish, saying, fish, why are you getting sick, why are you getting sick, but we never take a look at the water. It's the same thing with like humanity. We're always blaming humanity for things that are going wrong, but we never blame kind of like the social structure that we built.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you made a great point because children are the essence. For me, it's like you want to know what purity, you want to know what spirituality really is. Just look at a child because that's our true nature. We are spiritual beings first and foremost, and we're having the human experience. That's our job. We're here to learn how to be humans. But the essence of who we are, it's that carefree, it's if we want to learn, you just have to look at a child does whatever they feel like doing in the moment. They say the truth, they speak their
Mhm.
mind, they're present. It's that innocence that they have. And it's definitely, I believe that the construct of our society really is not conducive for that. It kind of takes out the spiritual essence of it. Kind of heartens you because it's not built in alignment with who we really are. And then it's hard because it's kind of like it's gonna take a while before we can deconstruct it. I think we made a lot of progress as far as people being awakened and seen, but there has to be enough people to want to shift the system, and eventually, it becomes more aligned, I think, with our true nature. But,
Yeah, exactly. So getting back on the topic of thinking for yourself, do you remember kind of like moments or events in your life when you started realizing that even some of the people that you look up to do not have this perfect lives that you could imagine? Like there's difference between perspective and reality. And one perspective we can have is like this mentor or this person that I look up to, they have the perfect life and they're never insecure and they're always happy. And at some point you probably realize that, well, these person aren't very different from me. You had any kind of moments or events that
yeah, for me, it was not with a person, but it was specifically with, I would say, religion. That was like my first, because even though I felt like, since I was young, I was spiritually connected, but I was searching. So when I got into my teens, like 15, I started going through a phase where I started trying different religions.
mm,
So, I grew up Catholic. And I remember specifically, I was 12 years old, and, I would go to church and I would do all that. And I started just seeing people who, in general, who go to church and stuff like that, who said one thing and did another. I had parents of my friends who their parents were really, really religious. And I remember I had one friend who her mom was super religious. She went to church and she preached, blah, blah, blah. But then her daughter started dating a guy that was black. And then all of a sudden she was super racist. And I was like, what? Wait, you're supposed to be all holy and stuff, and here you are, and you're condemning your daughter because she's dating, somebody that you think or whatever. And so for me, I just started seeing a lot of disingenuousness, people using religion to kind of hide behind it and to justify all their crap. So that really turned me off. And then that was really when, even when I had to do my confession, I didn't finish my confirmation because I was sitting in front of the priest, and I remember he was asking me, "So, what is your sins today?" When you had to go and
mm-hmm.
confess. And I remember sitting there and I was like, "Well, today I cursed and today I behaved really bad with my mom." And then I stopped for a second and I looked and I'm like, "What am I doing?" I'm looking at this man and I'm like, he probably does more stuff than I do. Who is he? Like, I know I have a direct line to God. I talk to God every day. I don't need a middleman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really my epiphany. And that's when I really went on a search. Like, I started trying Christianity, Buddhism. I studied all the religions. And then I realized I respect them all, but they're not for me because of that reason, because I just felt there's a lot of hypocrisy around it.
Wow, I actually had similar experiences like that too. So my parents are from India, and I grew up in they follow Hinduism. I grew up in the Hindu family, and just growing up, I followed whatever they followed. But then around the time when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I started questioning a lot of the beliefs that they had. I'm like, this one doesn't add up. This one logically doesn't make sense. And that kind of led me to understanding religion too. So I read like all the holy book of every different religion. So, Bible or Quran and all the different religions I read. And I could just nitpick a lot of stuff that just didn't make sense to me. So I kind of dive deep into religion too. And it just nothing, I respect everything, but nothing really connected with me. And just logically, nothing really, there were always something that didn't make sense to me. And yeah, and I just decided, hey, it's not for me. And the thing with the religion too, just my kind of like take on it is that I think a lot of the religions were created after the prophet or after whoever the founder was passed away. So if you think about it, really, this is kind of cliche. I mean, any kind of spiritual person kind of talks about this, but Buddha wasn't Buddhist. Like there was no such thing as Buddhism when he was alive, or Muhammad wasn't Muslim, or Jesus wasn't Christian. These are things that actually were made up after they passed away. So there's a lot of things that were added into the book, and for for the benefits of the popes and people who are in the higher power. Um, but speaking of that, I think some of the realizations that I had, and these might sound something very basic and very petty, but had a huge impact on me. I remember there was this one kind of like a self-help guru that was quite popular out there, and somehow I was able to connect with him, and I started interning for him and traveling with him. And one thing I really liked about him is he was always talking about eating healthy. It's like, eat your broccoli and kale and spinach, and you should always be eating healthy. And I don't understand how people could ever eat crap. So I was really inspired to eat healthy and just live a healthy lifestyle. So when I started traveling with him, I remember one time we're in Washington, D.C., and we did this huge seminar. Really inspiring. I love the guy, still love the guy. But after the seminar, we all go get dinner, and then I see him like eating chicken wings. Okay. Now, again, it could be his cheat day, it could be anything. I don't know. But just me seeing him eating chicken wings, I'm like, what's going on? So that was one. Other ones I can remember is have you ever heard of Osho?
Yeah.
Okay, so I love his stuff. I really connect with a lot of his stuff. And recently I was traveling in Asia. I went to Southeast Asia, traveling around India, Thailand, Malaysia, Bali, and Singapore and stuff. And when I was in India, I ended up going to his meditation center he has there.
Hmm.
And I spent some time there. And again, a lot of his meditations and stuff, love it. But then he has a lot of these facilitators and instructors who teach the meditation that he taught. And pretty much I was living there in the residential program, so, and the instructors were living there too. So you spent a lot of time with them. And I started seeing that they weren't really living kind of like, or let's just put it this way, I wouldn't inspire or aspire to be like them. Like I would see them and I'm like, well, I don't really want to be like him or be like her. Um, and not to say that they're a bad person or anything. Again, they're a really good person, but some things just didn't add up when I was there and I lived with them. I had a great experience overall, but
Yeah.
even just watching that, because I,
Well, because it becomes a business at the
yeah,
at some point, and it's you have all these facilitators, and you got to look at it too as like I feel, which is something especially because personal development and spirituality in general, mostly spirituality, has become very mainstream,
hmm
which I talk about, which is a great thing. But this is what happens, in my opinion. I feel like everybody wants to teach now, which is fine because we all have something to offer. But this is the thing: most people are really good at knowing a lot of things. They know a lot of information. They know what they need to do, but it's very few who actually do what they know, and that's the key. That's actually the work. Because what I have found in my experience, like the things I talk about are based on, I'm all about direct experience. No matter what religion, you believe in whatever works for you,
hmm
but don't do it because somebody tells you, or a guru tells you, or it's what your parents, or it has to come from direct experience. If it resonates with you, does it make sense? But the reality is, I feel that most people just talk, but they can't really back it up, because that's the hardest work. The work is you actually need to do it, and you can get caught up in a lot of feeding yourself a lot of information, which I have gotten into segments in my life where I've done that. But it's like, okay, what are you going to do with that? You got to put it into practice, and that's what we go back to. You have people who will preach about being healthy. You can see somebody watching a video and they can talk about being healthy all they want, but really behind closed doors, can they really do it? And so that's the thing, that it's like people are really good at talking, and we have to be careful with take everything with a grain of salt. I don't think that gurus. I don't believe in following a person
hmm
or a religion. I think it's you need to do what makes sense for you, and if somebody's information resonates with you, great, take it,
hmm
apply it in your own life, but never worship or put anybody in a pedestal, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. Like nobody is ever going to, stand up, and people are going to fall, because at the end of the day, we are fallible. We're humans, and people are going to make mistakes, and there's no perfection. So it makes sense as to why, like, those little experiences that you have make you feel like, "Ah, I'm disappointed."
Well, exactly, and that's a great point that there is no perfection, and that's kind of like an idea that this is. I would say this is like a big realization I had in 2016, and this is one thing I talk to a lot of my friends and people that I know who are in the kind of like the self help, personal development, spiritual world. I always try to relay that information that don't look up to this person, look up to them as inspiration to get inspired by them, but don't think they have all the answers. And some of these gurus out there have like cult following, like, and I remember going to a Tony Robbins seminar. I love Tony Robbins, great stuff, but a lot of his followers were like, everything Tony says is right, like everything is right, and that kind of cult mentality, I'm like,
Yeah.
you need to get out of that. And I've been there too, so I understand. But yeah, like I was saying, this is one of the big realizations I've had recently,
I
which
think
is yeah.
it's a huge realization, and I think we talked about it when you brought up this topic. I think there's an energy going on about this because now we're in the era of the internet. Everything's accessible. You know, you can go on and find a video about anything and anyone. But it's so, you have to be careful because I think, like you said, that cult mentality. I was watching a documentary on Scientology. It's very interesting. And I'm like, and also I remember watching, I was like, how do people fall into this? And then I realized, and I'm like, you know what it is? Humans, we're always seeking outside of ourselves. We want people to lead us. We want somebody to tell us what to do, how to think, because it's easier. And people become dependent. So it's like, even if the information is good, you have to be very careful because where that cult mentality has, it's like that, where you box off and you're like, that's it. This person or this thing has the answer. And the reality is, anybody who tells you this is the way, I have the answers, run, run as fast as you can. Because that to me tells you right there, that's a big red flag. No one has all the answers. No one knows everything. And there's not one thing, one religion that is right. Anything that excludes other people, that promotes segregation, so that's why it's like, appreciate. There's so many people that I look up to in my day-to-day life, ordinary people who are in the public eye. But what I like is, like, I take the qualities that I like about them, I try to implement them in my life, I appreciate, I admire their work. But you can't become obsessed, because you need to still develop who you are. Like you said, you can't, because nobody. And then I think too, for those people who are in the public eye, like a Tony Robbins or a person who puts himself out on this kind of platform, ego, you're still always going to have an ego. So it's very easy to get caught up in thinking, especially when everybody's throwing roses at you, like, you're the shit, you're so awesome, you have all the answers. Somewhere along the way, you're going to believe your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when a lot of these gurus too lose their authenticity, because it's kind of like, it's a slippery slope for both the teacher and the person following. It's kind of like that exchange of energy. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. The ego thing that you mentioned is so true. I think a lot of these people, when they kind of start off, they might have very genuine, authentic wish to help other people. But yeah, once you start getting the following and the money and everything starts coming, it's very easy to kind of get into that ego. Yeah. But yeah, that's great. Anything else? Any other things that happened to you? Anything that reminds you of?
In this topic,
Mm-hmm.
There was somebody who I was in a group. I don't want to give too much info,
Yeah.
but one of the things talking about this whole guru stuff, and I was in a group on Facebook a long time ago. Spiritual stuff that everybody follows a certain person,
Mm-hmm.
and this individual is great. She has awesome information. You resonate with the stuff she says, and I really liked her and still like her work. However, what I started noticing is this group of huge followers
Mm.
becomes like a cult, like what we're talking about. People become obsessed with the person and with the. But what I realized is that even in the personal development in this particular thing, this person was promoting, and I think in spirituality this can happen too, where it was all about like going back in your past and doing a lot of work on your dark side and things like that. And I think that's all great, but it also becomes a crutch. And
Mm.
what I saw in the group, because I was in it for a few years, like I didn't participate, but I just happened to be, where they put you in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see, and I'm like, year after year, and I'll see the people complaining about the same thing. And I'm like, how is this guru or this person really helping? Because if you're just self-soothing and you're telling people, oh, it's okay, yeah, your story, you went through such shit, but you keep, just it's like you got to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you went through something bad. Everybody goes through it. Yeah, you got to deal with it. You got to figure out where it came from, but then you have to take action. And sometimes I think that some of these teachings enable people to not progress, to kind of stay stuck. And also, spirituality, everybody, oh, I'm an indigo child and aliens, and I'm all for it. I love that stuff. I believe in aliens. I believe in all of that. But, and I'd say this because I got stuck in a while where that's all that I like to talk about and be in. And I find that fascinating, but at the same time, it's an escape because we're here to have a human experience. So how does you being an indigo, you being very special, we're all special, but having special abilities or being from a certain dimension or, knowing about aliens, like how does that help you in your everyday life? And I think that also a lot of the teachings that some of these like spiritual gurus are teaching, it's not really empowering people to like empower themselves to like deal with life. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, I feel like it's making them
It's a
li-
crutch. It's almost like
yeah,
a crutch, right? Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. What is your take on that? What do you think about that?
Well, so there's two sides. The way I look at this, there's kind of like two sides, right? So first, I think just the idea of like always improving yourself. In theory, it sounds good, but this could also be a issue in the sense that if you're always thinking about improving yourself, you could never feel that you're enough the way you are, and who
It's true.
you are is already good. But then on the other side, if your life is shitty and you think everything is cool, everything is good, and you don't take action to change that, then that's also not good. So I think one of the biggest challenges of life is to be content with what you have and who you are, but at the same time be in pursuit for, what more can you do and what else could you become? How much more can you just be in touch with yourself and discover yourself? So just kind of like the whole journey, be on the journey, but at the same time be happy wherever you are. And that is a challenge, I struggle with every day. And yeah, that's the way I see it. I don't think there's like a simple solution or a simple answer to that because it's a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, and that's what I think. But that all goes back to what we're saying with the whole guru or teacher. You can't think that anybody has the answer. Appreciate the information you find from an individual, but don't become so obsessed with it that it's the only. Because then it goes back to again society, parents. It's like you are taking yourself out of the equation. You're no longer thinking for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And and I see some of these people who have great information, and I've seen them in their own personal life not be able to
Live.
do what they
Yeah.
say, and that's okay because if the information works for you, that's fine. But don't like put somebody in a pedestal and then be disappointed when they don't live up to it because they're not. The information is for you to do what you need with it, and then persons, they're gonna be them people. They're gonna mess up.
Yeah, I actually really like the idea I think you mentioned is don't look up to the person, look up to whatever information they have, whatever they're teaching, because you can
Yeah.
take that and apply it to your life, and you could make a difference in your life by taking, because a lot of the information that's out there that are people teaching, even if they're not living up to it, you can live up to it and you can change your life. So that's a great point. So don't just blindly follow people, but their information and learn whatever you can and try to apply it in your life. That's a great point.
Yeah, like I think, like for me, a better compliment is I love it when people are like they found something in a story I said or anything I shared and they found it useful rather than more me as a person, because it's a two thing. If people start thinking you're too good or you're so awesome or whatever, you get caught up in your ego. You're
Hmm.
gonna let people down. You're gonna lose your authenticity. So it's definitely also, I think, for the teachers out there, to promote more that, like their message and not so much them
Themselves, yeah.
themselves. Like, and that's why the whole image thing, like I got caught up, like somewhere along the line, even when I was doing videos, like wanting to project a certain image,
Hmm.
branding, because I saw other people do it and you want to get to a level, but then that's how you lose yourself. And for me, it's like, no, it's about the message. It's just about, hey, look, this is me. This is what I've learned. And, whatever you resonate with and it helps you in your life, great. But I'm just like you. Like, we're individuals. I have my fucked up issues, and, we're just trying to make it and deal with life like everybody else. So I think even for people who put themselves out in platform, it's important, I think, if they themselves too kind of stress that and not worried so much about the projection, because then you have to become it and you lose yourself in trying to keep up with this image that you put out there.
Yeah.
So
Oh, so I mean, I could relate with that so much because even a couple of years ago, when I would kind of promote myself as like the spiritual person, or this guy who's always doing personal development, I remember I used to have anxieties hanging out around like a lot of the friends and people who knew me like that, is because I always had to be perfect in some way. It's like, oh,
yeah.
I am the guy who does this and meditates and does this. Like I should be a certain way. And there came a point in my life, and I'm still not perfect. I'm still trying to get better at it. But where I was like, what, fuck it. Like I can't really, like I am who I am, and if people are gonna like me for whoever I am, that's great. And if people are not gonna like the person I am, that's fine. I just don't want to change myself for other people. And
Mhm.
yeah, just that persona that people start putting up because you have all this pressure of being someone that you're not.
Yeah, and I think that that's another thing with our society is like, we need to promote, like we're in need of originality. Like everybody wants to be everybody else, and especially now because we live in a culture where we're celebrity obsessed, money obsessed. Everybody wants to
social
be
social
famous.
media is killing it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like this whole, yeah. So everybody wants to be like everybody. All the girls, they all want to look the same, and the this and the and so it's kind of like, no, you got to figure out who you are. And I think that there's nothing sexier and more like that has courage than a person who can be themselves and be comfortable in their own skin. Because I think that that's real power, when you can just be yourself and not have to project an image, because it gets exhausting. And
Mhm.
then you're selling crap, because if you think about it, we're all in search of the same thing. We're all desperate to connect and desperate to be seen and to be heard, but everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's playing the same game. Nobody wants to expose themselves. Um, and I think that that's, I don't know. My best moments, I realize, are like when you are vulnerable and you put yourself out there. You connect with people on like such amazing and incredible levels that it's priceless.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of power in just being authentic, being who you are. I know we've been talking for over 45 minutes, so we'll wrap it up soon. But one thing I wanted to ask you is just generally, I've struggled with this in the past too, and I know a lot of people that I talk to kind of struggle with this. What would you say with someone who's like, I don't really know who I am, like I don't know what the authentic me is, and how do I find out? What would you say to someone like that? Like, what are some of your experiences, how to uncover yourself?
That's always an interesting question, because it's like not a one-dimensional answer. How do you figure out who you are? Ooh. I think it's by trying on different hats and figuring out what you're not. And I think I don't even know how to answer this. I think it's
Mm,
just you have to be able to be okay, like in your skin, like if doing what you feel. I would, okay, that's what I would say. It's going with your feelings and
Mm,
not your mind, because we live in mind a lot,
mm,
and this is what controls us. Oh, let me project this image. But if you just do what you feel, like if you feel like wearing a certain outfit, but then you're like, oh, but people are gonna think, they might not like it. Like I remember in high school and stuff like that, I always wore all the stuff I wanted to wear. Like if I wore flowers, if I wore colored hair, if it was ridiculous, and people would be like, even if maybe it didn't look good, but the fact that I didn't care, that I owned it, it's like it's cool. And so it's about just being able to own your stuff. And if you want to speak up, if you're in a group and you want to say something and you're a little hesitant, that's the work. That's how you figure out how you are. It's by pushing those limits. It's by going into the uncomfortable, by facing your fears. And every time you do what's hard, you're going to discover who you are. But if you always play it safe, if you're always doing things based on other people and thinking, then you're never going to figure out who you are. So it's basically like you have to not care what other people think and do what
mhm.
you feel. And you'll discover who you are.
Yeah, great points. Yeah, they're all
What
great
do you think
points.
about that? What's your take on
Um,
it?
I think personally, what has helped me, and I tell people, is I think we're so distracted in the society that we live in today. We're constantly on our cell phones, constantly on computers, and we rarely ever have time to even just like let everything go and just let the thoughts run in your head. We're just afraid of our thoughts. We're afraid of being alone. So I think what has helped me, and I tell people, is go into isolation, just completely isolation with no distraction whatsoever. Like go in the woods for a weekend or something, just by yourself, nothing to do, and let all the thoughts run in your head. And just that would help you kind of uncover a lot of stuff about yourself. I remember a few years ago, I went to a meditation retreat called Vipassana, and you're basically for 10 days for 10 days you're thrown into like in the woods with no distraction whatsoever. Like you checking your cell phone and everything at the when you're checking in, and it's one of the most intense things I've ever done. I just wanted to run away every day, but at the end of the day, after the 10 days, it really helped me in just in terms of being at peace with myself, being comfortable who I am. Because a lot of times, when even you see in social gatherings, when people are with each other and they don't know each other and they start feeling uncomfortable, most of the time
Mhm.
they'll take out their cell phones, right?
Yeah,
We're
that's true.
constantly doing that. We're trying to escape from just being uncomfortable. So just not having any distraction would help people uncover some of it.
No, actually, I think that, yeah, you hit the nail. Like that's exactly it. Because when I look back, what I think helped me really figure out who I was is that, like, I spent a lot of time by myself,
Mm.
and I actually like being by myself. Like I
Hmm.
love solitude. I'm not afraid to go to a restaurant by myself, and do things alone, writing. But yeah, exactly what you said, because it's in that quiet space. People are afraid of themselves and
Hmm.
said the thoughts and what they feel. And I think that's the biggest thing for the majority of individuals. It's like they can't sit with themselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you said that, you're absolutely right, because that's really what helped me. Because growing up when I was younger, I had a lot of issues inside and things I didn't like, and I would force myself to sit with me. And I went through all the yucky feelings and the self-loathing and the hating. But then there's a tremendous power you gain from being able to be alone is power. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the number one key to figuring out who you are, is being able to be alone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you don't spend time with yourself, how would you ever get to know yourself, right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Perfect, perfect.
You live with yourself.
Right.
You're born with yourself and you die with yourself. So you better like yourself.
All right, that's great. So before we wrap it up, anything else you wanted to talk about? Anything else you want to say?
No, because if we start talking, we'll just go on tangents. It'll never end
I know it.
unless you have something to add. Because the conversation, when you add one thing, you can go into another, and it's never ending.
I know. I feel like I could talk about these things forever and ever, so it's never gonna end. But yeah, so let's wrap it up at this point. Thank you so much for doing the video. It's
Of
been
course.
great. It's been great just talking about all these things, and I kind of wanted to know your journey as well. So this has been great. Again, thank you so much.
Likewise, yeah, I think this was great, and I hope that anybody who watches it just gets, whatever they're meant to get from it. But it's just a conversation to kind of get things sparking in people.
Exactly. And I also think different ideas hit people at different levels. So, for
Hmm.
example, like let's say a book that I read 5 years ago, and when I read it today, it just hits me at different level. So even this conversation, if someone were to listen to our video, they're like, I don't really resonate with that. Maybe a few years down the road, they'll resonate with it. So that's always
Hmm.
good. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Let
you.
me